I just said you don't even need to wear makeup.
What was that?
A tragedy like the one that opens a movie like The Fallout alters lives forever, and the damage of a school shooting is portrayed in this case through the life and grief of one surviving high schooler trying to navigate her teen years after that event. Now, usually, most films covering events like those that open the story of The Fallout tend to focus on the evilness of the action, the violence, the graphic images, the perpetrators themselves. The award-winning film Elephant, for example, actually even follows in a sort of point-of-view style the shooters throughout their day.
Hey, what are you guys doing? Just get the fuck out, don't come back. Maybe shit's going down.
With these movies, we rarely even move beyond the day of the incident, but The Fallout breached everybody's hearts by focusing on the survivors and the pain that they endure days and months after the events, while at the same time struggling with the ups and downs of being teenagers, the worries of their parents, as well as introducing an unconventional relationship that forms between two unlikely characters bonded by the scarring events they went through together, making the story a great mix of emotions, tears, smiles, and a lot of food for thought. So it's not so much about the actual tragic event itself, but the haunting consequences of it.
Life's confusing!
I can't feel anything!
And that raw depiction of grief is what really strikes viewers. The prime example of this was the super popular short film released on Netflix called If Anything Happens, I Love You, about two parents struggling to confront the death of their daughter who was killed in a school shooting without even one word being uttered. So for an interesting analysis of all these topics, here are 5 other movies fans of The Fallout would enjoy. One great movie to watch if you like The Fallout is All the Bright Places, a film in which a tragic event deeply disturbs the main protagonist, high schooler Violet, Elle Fanning, who slips into a deep depression to the point she nearly refuses to leave her room, let alone engage in fun activities with anybody. But just as in The Fallout, in the aftermath of tragedy, an unlikely bond forms.
What do you want from me?
I think it would be good for you to get out.
Maybe I don't want to get out.
You might end up loving it.
Her character meets Theodore, a jolly schoolmate who, in spite of his own mental health issues, basically forces her to take part in all sorts of fun activities, pushing her boundaries and helping her to open up about her pain, as she has to accept that her scars are something that will stay with her forever. Just as in The Fallout, Jenna Ortega's character is very reluctant to open up about her feelings, even masking them behind irony or engaging in progressively more dangerous or destructive behaviours. One tip if you're planning on watching All the Bright Places: bring a lot of tissues. Tears will be flowing. Next up, we have Vox Lux, starring 2 huge movie stars, Natalie Portman and Jude Law. In the movie, we follow Natalie Portman's character from her childhood until many years later when she is a world-famous musician, but focusing on how a tragic, traumatic event like the one of The Fallout scarred her in ways beyond imaginable.
Mom, I'm worried about you.
You're worried about me?
The interesting aspect of this movie is one which is also covered in The Fallout, that fine line between suffering and being justified in many situations and just taking advantage of sympathy and caring. For example, in The Fallout, the protagonist starts avoiding her friends, not caring for them, being more selfish, and while she says it's due to trauma, some friends point out how they gave her a lot of time to heal and that she is neglecting the important people in her life while suppressing her emotions with a range of questionable activities. In Vox Lux, Natalie Portman's character is very selfish and spoiled and will often burst into fits of anger, always playing it off as nobody understanding her. So again, a very interesting analysis of the consequences of a deadly event while basically barely covering the actual perpetrators of the tragedy. Next up, we have The Perks of Being a Wallflower, a coming-of-age movie which defies all the standards of its genre. While most films revolving around beautiful, quirky high schoolers tend to only end up covering their love ventures, The Perks of Being a Wallflower did in 2013 what Euphoria is doing now, focusing on all the struggles, even the hardest, of being a teenager and the dark corners our mind is unfortunately willing to go to. For obvious spoiler-related reasons, we can't tell you exactly what goes down, but let's just say that even the most angel-faced characters are fighting their own demons and have repressed mental health issues that sooner or later are going to explode. Also, as mentioned earlier, the focus of films like The Fallout is the bonding with unlikely characters and neglecting old friends, as well as the overwhelming pressure of society to fit into the perfect mold of a happy teen.
Why do nice people choose the wrong people to date?
We accept the love we think we deserve.
Can we make them know that they deserve more?
We can try.
And with a great cast including Emma Watson, Logan Lerman, Paul Rudd and Ezra Miller, you just can't go wrong. Speaking of Ezra Miller, now well known as a superhero character of The Flash, a few years back he starred in what has been described as one of the darkest films of the 21st century and which fits into the themes covered by The Fallout. The movie is We Need to Talk About Kevin, in which we see the way a psychopath is born and the harm he is willing to do even just as a young teen. Just as with other titles on this list, most of the movie is shown through the eyes of another person, in this case his mother, portrayed by Tilda Swinton, while leaving us on the edge of our seats wondering what this Kevin will actually be willing to do. For context, the tagline of the movie is Mummy's Little Monster.
Good afternoon, ma'am. I hope this isn't an inconvenient time.
Do you know where you're spending the afterlife?
Oh, yes, I do, as a matter of fact. I'm going straight to hell. Eternal damnation, a whole bit. Thank you for asking.
But are people actually born monsters? Were the shooters of the Fallout born monsters, or was there something that made them like that? And what is it like to be a close related person to that perpetrator? Are you also guilty? What is life like for a survivor in those circumstances? A great movie that tackles all the complicated aftermath of these events without beating around the bush is Mass, which, put very simply, shows the parents of a school shooter meeting with the parents of the victims.
What would you like to know?
Everything. I want to know everything.
Why?
Why do I want to know about your son? Because he killed mine.
It might seem like something easy to do, as the parents of the killer technically weren't involved in the shooting, but their encounter reveals much more, including signs they could have spotted, the way they could have been better, as well as some situations in which, well, it was just completely all out of their hands.
How can you say
We're
that?
not denying what he did or who he became.
Well, I can't help but hear you blame a not abnormal childhood.
He was my son.
This film has been showered with awards, mostly praising the raw depiction of grief and guilt, and it is highly recommended for anybody interested in seeing the effects of a deadly tragedy, both physically on the victims and psychologically for those who survive. But now we would like to know, which movie out of these do you think sounds the most interesting? Have you seen any of these titles? Are you planning on watching them? Let us know, as well as sharing with us what you think about The Fallout in the comments below. And for more movie-related content, reviews, trailers, compilations, interviews, and much, much more, make sure to subscribe and to tap the notification bell to always be up to date with everything happening in the movie world.